It was a beautiful sunny day, and the promise of a wonderful autumn was in the air. Half the trees along the city park had turned red, orange, and yellow. While the other half were still green, my morning couldn't have gone better. It was my 30th birthday, and 3 of my colleagues surprised me with an offer to go out to lunch, and my manager told me to take the rest of the day off. I decided to take a walk after leaving the restaurant instead of returning to our empty apartment. That's why I found myself walking through the park and why I was at the corner of Main and Pine when it caught my attention. There was a bouquet of flowers in a trash can at the edge of the park. It wasn't just a bunch, an almost tacky arrangement of red roses, yellow irises, purple larkspur, and 4 flowers I couldn't identify, all of which were in the trash can. I crossed the street and went into a cute outdoor cafe. There were 2 free tables overlooking the park. I sat at the table closest to the street, ordered a Campari Negroni, and watched people walk past the trash can. Several people walked by the bouquet and took double shots, and some even stopped and came back to take a closer look. Nobody touched the flowers, although one lady took a photo of them on her mobile phone. I sipped my drink slowly as the man in the business suit stopped, shook his head, then moved on. He was a handsome young man. Perhaps my age, a little plump, maybe 175 centimeters tall. My thoughts began to wander. John Farnsworth couldn't help but be surprised at his recent streak of luck. 5 years after graduating from graduate school, 5 years working hard at the bank, and today he was called into the president's office and informed that the board of directors had elected him vice president. He almost started laughing, thinking it was some kind of joke, but of course Mr. Jackson never joked about such things. It was for real. Vice President, 3 months before his 29th birthday, this should have been a record. And in fact, it was a record according to his administrative assistant, Miss Barnes, who has been with the bank since its founding in 1989. John left Mr. Jackson's office and made a decision. This day has come. He had been dating Michelle for 6 months. For 5 of them, they slept together and exclusively with each other and exchanged I love you words shortly before they had sex for the first time. John sometimes found it hard to believe that a woman as beautiful, smart, and charming as Michelle was his girlfriend. Plus, she was such a wonderful influence on John. She never complained about the extra time John spent in the office. She was always ready to go and do anything at a moment's notice, and she encouraged him to be the best. Her support brought him back to the gym. Over the past 6 months, John had lost 20 pounds and looked his best since wrestling in high school. He planned to lose another 5 kilograms before buying several new suits. His current wardrobe made John look overweight. John called Michelle at the office and asked if she was free for lunch. I have great news and I need to ask you a question. Aren't you going to give me a hint? No, we'll just meet at Sullivan's in the park. Oh, a mystery. I like it. And I love you, baby. See you at noon. At 12:30, John left his office. Miss Barnes couldn't help but smile as John walked past her desk, whistling a tune. It was one of his mother's favorite Beatles tunes that Paul sang, Michelle. John briefly stopped by the flower shop in the ground floor lobby. I want a bouquet. Something special for a very special lady with the bouquet in hand. John floated down the street, still whistling a tune and letting his imagination run wild. What will next year bring next decade? The next 50 years, John's parents had recently celebrated their 35th anniversary and were still madly in love. John could easily imagine himself and Michelle in 35 years sharing life, love, children. Here she is. Michelle was already sitting at a table outside. When John approached the restaurant, Michelle waved to him. When she saw the huge bouquet of flowers, her smile became even wider. John was the sweetest, most generous man or guy Michelle had ever dated. He always did both small and big things to make her feel loved. John walked over to the table and leaned down to kiss her. Michelle reached for the bouquet. For me, John pulled his hand back, not yet, and sat down in the chair opposite her. A little later, first, I'd like to introduce you to the new vice president of First Bank. Michelle understood immediately. Oh, John, this is fantastic. She squeezed his hand. I am so happy for you. Congratulations. Getting Sullivan's account put me over the top. Mr. Jackson said the board wanted to let me know how much I was appreciated. Michelle smiled again. So this is my main news. Now my question. The waiter chose that moment to appear at their table and ask John if he could get him something to drink. Michelle was already sipping a glass of white wine. Yes, please bring us a bottle of champagne. We are celebrating today. My boyfriend received great news today, Michelle said to the waiter before he turned away. We're not just celebrating my promotion. John collected the flowers from the table and handed them to Michelle. We can choose a ring together later. Let this bouquet be a symbol of this. Michelle, will you marry me? Seconds passed in an incredibly uncomfortable vacuum of silence as John waited for Michelle's answer. And Michelle looked at John, wondering which words would cause the least harm. Finally, not knowing how to put it better, she simply told him the truth. John, I don't love you that much. That's all it took. In less than a minute, John's world was turned upside down from the highest heights to the deepest depths. Perhaps he heard her wrong. But you told me that you love me. We've been sleeping together for the past 4 months. You told me how happy I made you. What am I missing here? It's all true, John. But I will never love you enough to become your wife. I would always feel like I settled down early and didn't wait long enough for the right man. We would have been unhappy and eventually divorced. I guarantee it. As soon as the word settled down left her lips, Michelle knew it was the wrong choice. Michelle's words reached John's ears and entered his brain, but he could not understand them. Settle down unhappy, divorced, never loved you enough. Just last night this woman had sex with him. You see, this was one more thing, one more reason why John knew that they were made for each other. The sex was just so damn good. The waiter brought champagne and was about to open it. Wait, John stood up from the table. We changed our minds. John pulled out all the cash from his wallet, $82, and handed it to the waiter. This is to pay for her drinks and your tip. I suppose the champagne can be returned since it was not opened. Sorry. The waiter accepted the cash and nodded. Thank you, not knowing what else to say. Obviously something went wrong. John took the flowers and turned to leave. The waiter wasn't the only one who didn't know what to say. John wondered if a simple goodbye would be appropriate. He couldn't call her a bitch. She never promised him anything. He just assumed that she loved him as much as he loved her. John was already leaving the fence tall when Michelle shouted after him, Can I keep the flowers for myself? No. He crossed the street and put the bouquet in the trash can, right on top of all the other trash people had left there. Fast food bags, soda cans, even a damaged umbrella someone had thrown out after an early morning rainstorm. Michelle called John the next day. She tried her best to make peace with him. Couldn't they continue to be friends to their advantage? Will he meet her for dinner one evening soon? John's response to each request was the same. I can't imagine that this will happen. Nothing will change. I will always want more from our relationship than what you want. It's better to end this now before you end up leaving me for the guy you really want to marry. After that day, they actually met several times, but only for the purpose of exchanging things left in each other's apartments. The city is large enough for them to live their separate lives and never see each other again. One afternoon, John was sitting in a tavern when the husband of one of Michelle's friends walked in. John always liked this guy and offered to buy him a beer. They started talking, and eventually John had to ask, I guess I was always afraid to ask her. Maybe you know. What did Michelle mean when she told me she would settle down if she accepted my proposal? Michelle became a victim of her preconceived ideas about Prince Charming. He paused before deciding to continue. John, you look like me. Neither of us are tall, dark, and handsome. We're a solid 7-8 on a scale of 1 to 10. I'm lucky. My wife loves me for who I am. Find yourself a woman who doesn't care about all this bullshit and loves you for the same reasons. There are many women like my Jennifer. I lost almost 9 kilograms while I was dating Michelle. But I will never be more than 175 centimeters. If it's any consolation, Michelle told Jen several times how much she misses you. Told Jen all about your wonderful qualities. She simply couldn't get rid of the image of the ideal couple that had formed in her head. This is her loss. 5 years later, John saw Michelle at an outdoor concert. John's wife stood next to him as they waited for his wife's bag to go through the security system. She noticed John staring at the brunette. Do you know someone? His wife's voice seemed to shock him. Do you remember I told you about how I once proposed and was refused? Yes. Why? Is it her? Yes. Gorgeous. Would you like to come say hello? No, I would feel like I was just rubbing it in. Rubbing what? I am here with you. The fact that she said no, and I obviously gave up when I met you and married you. So most wives, having heard such a remark, would call it bullshit. But John's wife knew John well enough to know that he was being completely honest. He really thought he had married the most beautiful woman in the world. She hugged John, thinking how happy he would be when she told him the news later that evening at the hotel. John is going to be a dad. The waiter came over to see if I wanted anything else to drink. The sun was still warm, my glass was empty, and I still had nowhere to go. Why not? I looked across the street just in time to spot a very attractive lady doing what so many others had done before her, looking at the bouquet and pausing before moving on. Once again, my imagination ran wild. Alexis Walker, née North, has spent the last hour debating whether or not to start smoking again. She only quit smoking because Matt insisted he wouldn't marry her until she gave up that dirty habit. So, to please Matt, she decided to quit smoking using a nicotine patch. It's a shame Matt couldn't give up his bad habits. Matt was a big flirt. It didn't seem like such a bad habit when they were dating in college. Each of their friends seemed lively and cheerful, and flirting was just part of it. Things never went beyond dancing and the occasional kiss or pat on the ass. But like many things, the transition from student life to family life brought changes. Fewer and fewer of their male friends were willing to allow their wives to be groped. The women began to defend themselves when a young lady pressed her husband to her lips. What hasn't changed? Matt. Alexis and Matt got married their second year after graduating from high school. They were one of the few couples whose relationships survived after college. The problem was that relationships and marriage would soon join the rest in the past tense. Alexis sat in the cafe, fighting the urge to smoke. It would be so delicious with this cup of coffee. What is more harmful, a large pastry or a cigarette? The lawyer she hired this morning will have the papers ready to serve on Matt in 2 days. Alexis sat on the patio, drinking decaffeinated coffee, wondering if she could ask the guy at the next table for a cigarette, and watching the trees across the street shake the water from their leaves after the morning rain. Alexis could handle flirting, but not cheating. 2 years after their wedding, Alexis caught Matt for the first time. He had sex with that little slut from across the yard. The little bitch was walking around her apartment with these sheer curtains as the only covering on the windows. The light was on in the room, and her silhouette played on the curtains. Sometimes in daylight, she didn't even bother to close the curtains as she casually strolled naked around her apartment. She wore her skimpiest bikinis to the pool. One day, at a party on the patio of her apartment, she wore ultra-short denim shorts and a white t-shirt. A dog like her husband couldn't resist. 3 months after the bitch moved into the complex, she made sure Alexis knew she was having sex with Matt. Matt was too stupid to realize that this bitch had set him up. When Alexis came face-to-face with Matt, he apologized to all hell. He made every promise known to man that it would never happen again and begged Alexis to forgive him. Every week, bouquets of flowers were brought to her both in the apartment and in the office until Alexis finally gave up. But first, get your ass tested for diseases. Nobody knows where this slut has been. Matt got tested and came back clean. Alexis let Matt back into their bed. Alexis knew this bitch's game. Matt wasn't a great stud in the bedroom. He could not be anything other than average in size, and his talents did not exceed his size. No. This bitch just needed to prove her superiority by sleeping with any husband she could, and then accused his wife of infidelity. Against Alexis's better judgment, she forgave him. She loved the bastard. But she made it clear as day that any further sins were unforgivable. She even forced him to sign a marriage contract. Matt knew he dodged a bullet. It all started with the blonde crossing the yard and starting her exhibitions, driving him crazy. Here again, Matt was being dishonest with himself. Perhaps he couldn't help it. He was dishonest with everyone. His fall from grace did not begin with this blonde. Almost every woman he met gave Matt some reason to lust. The blonde was just more accessible than the others. The shadows on the sheer curtains first caught his attention a week after she moved in. Matt almost said something out loud to Alexis as he sat on their back porch. But he kept his mouth shut, and the next day he was in the store buying better binoculars. He began to spend more time on the veranda watching and waiting. A light would come on in the blonde's window, and if he could get away with it, for example, if Alexis was busy in the office, he would run inside and watch from one of the darkened rooms. Through binoculars, he could see that she was naked. The third time, he was able to see that she was lying on the bed and pleasuring herself. It was like his own personal porn show, like a trout caught on a barbed hook. Matt was dead. Despite her best efforts, it took the blonde 3 tries for Alexis to catch her with her husband. The blonde almost gave up after the second session in her bedroom. Damn, how the hell did this woman put up with this? The first time was bad enough. Matt didn't catch stars from the sky and was a lousy lover. So the first time with Matt was a disaster. She didn't get satisfaction and she wasn't caught. The second round wasn't much better. If she didn't hate Alexis so much, she would have given it up right then and there. Why did she hate Alexis? From the moment she first saw it, she hated it. Alexis was blessed with a slender body and long, toned legs, not to mention Alexis's excellent diet and running 30 to 40 kilometers a week, plus all those laps in the pool. Alexis had so many friends, a result of Alexis working hard to overcome her shyness and tendency to be an introvert, and most of all the way, Matt just went on and on about how lucky he was to marry her. In their third session, she made sure to fuck Matt in his own bed. That's how they were caught. What a stupid idiot. The worst part is that when Alexis discovered Matt was cheating on her, Alexis ended up forgiving the slut and taking him back, which is what Alexis did. Not that it was easy. It took Matt 2 weeks to move back into the apartment and more than a month before they shared a bed again. Over the next year, Matt did everything he could to convince Alexis that his cheating days were over. Alexis carefully opened her heart to Matt, forgiving him and doing everything she could to forget his cheating. Alexis shouldn't have been surprised when just over a year later she found out he was cheating again. The surprise was greater at how she found out. Matt was playing golf when the doorbell rang. Opening the door, she looked at the young girl standing in front of her. "Are you Alexis?" Yes, Alexis was expecting the girl to ask if she wanted to buy some Girl Scout cookies or something, but why would this young girl know her name? "Can I talk to you, please?" "Continue. It's kind of personal." "Can I come in?" Alexis looked behind the girl. She heard about a scam where some bandit comes after a girl. She saw no one and unlocked the door. She blocked the door as soon as the girl crossed the threshold. "How can I help you?" The girl took a deep breath. "You can let Matthew go. Give him a divorce." Alexis almost went into shock and barely spoke. "Sorry? Why don't you let Matthew go? If you loved him as much as you should, you would want him to be happy and let him go. I'll make him happy." If Alexis had watched this scene on some cheesy romance show, it might have seemed crazy and funny, but it was her life, damn it, not some TV show. Alexis had a cauldron of hot lava bubbling inside her, but she needed answers and she kept her cool. Despite this, Alexis could not resist asking, "How old are you?" The girl seemed hurt by the question, but answered, "Next month I will turn 19. Alexis didn't say it out loud, but she thought, 18, too bad. A year younger and I could throw his ass in jail. Alexis needed to keep the conversation going, so she turned on her phone's recorder. She almost asked if the girl would like a glass of wine, but remembered that she was too young to drink. "Can I offer you a Coca-Cola?" Lacey, that was her name, thought things were going pretty well. She was expecting a hysterical vixen from the way Matt had described her. She offers Coca-Cola instead. Alexis returned to the room with a Coca-Cola for Lacey and a glass of wine for herself. 20 minutes later, Alexis's patience ran out. Lacey left, and Alexis's phone was filled with messages saying, "Who is this girl? Where did they meet?" That this has been going on for 2 months. And Alexis could have done without hearing how wonderful it was when Lacey and Matt were making out love, but now had it all recorded on tape. By the time she left, Lacey had Alexis promise that Matt would soon be free. Alexis pulled herself together, packed her bag, and drove to her sister Haley's house. As soon as she walked through the door, Alexis collapsed and sobbed for the next hour as her sister hugged her. Haley's heart sank as Alexis's shoulders shook uncontrollably, telling her of Matt's misdeeds. Haley never knew about the first woman and wanted Matt to walk through the door. She would like nothing more than to kick his ass for what he did to her little sister. It was on Sunday. My sister called a friend who had recently divorced. By Monday morning, Alexis had an appointment with her lawyer for Wednesday. Now, after their meeting with the lawyer, she was optimistic about everything that would happen after the divorce, and Matt would be served with the papers on Friday. Alexis finished her cup of coffee and was ready to head home. It was time to pack a few more things from the house when she looked up and saw Matt standing with a large bouquet of flowers. "Come home, Alexis. I'm sorry. So sorry." Alexis left the cafe and crossed the street. Matt followed her. "What can I do to make amends?" Alexis stopped and reached for the bouquet. Matt was stunned, thinking to himself, "Can it really be that simple? Maybe she really loves me enough to forgive me a second time." Alexis took the flowers, smelled the bouquet, and threw it in the trash. "You can shove your flowers up your ass and never talk to me again. Then you and little Miss Teeny Bopper can discover your love together. You can take her to the latest boy band concert and drink Coke together while she shakes her breasts in front of your nose." Alexis took a deep breath. "You make me sick." Alexis jumped into the taxi and asked the taxi driver to drive 2 blocks to the garage where her car was parked, giving the taxi driver a decent tip for the short ride. Alexis drove back to her sister's, changed into her workout clothes, and ran a few kilometers. By the time she returned home, her sister and brother-in-law Kyle were home. Alexis told them about her meeting with the lawyer, her public fight with Matt, and how he would be served with divorce papers on Friday. Her brother-in-law noticed this and interrupted her. "Wait, did Matt meet you at the cafe with flowers? How did he know where to find you? My God, I never thought about this. Let me see your phone." Kyle pressed a few buttons. "Did you know you have a tracking app on your phone? I didn't install it there. Matt probably did, probably to make sure you weren't stalking him when he met his teenage girlfriend. Or maybe to track whether you did to him the same way he did to you. That's the problem with cheaters. If you can't trust your fidelity, how can you trust your significant other?" While they were talking, Kyle was busy with Alexis's phone. "Here, everything has been deleted. Matt was served on Friday. He called Alexis at least every other day. He asked for forgiveness and promised to be faithful until the end of their life together." Alexis didn't give in the second time, and 6 months later, the divorce was final. But not before Matt's lawyer requested and the judge ordered 3 counseling sessions for the couple. The counseling sessions were positive for Alexis. She learned that Matt's serial adultery had nothing to do with her. In the end, it had more to do with Matt's lack of self-respect than her lack of love for him. All his courageous character was compensation for the bullying he suffered as a child. From his brother, school friends, and other people, his first high school girlfriend dumped him shortly after they first made love and started dating his ex-best friend. The poor guy ends up dating, courting, and marrying Alexis, a truly beautiful woman, beautiful inside and out. He never realizes that he has won the heart of a wonderful, faithful, loving woman, and their breakup is a self-fulfilling prophecy due to his subsequent actions. Matt would still be married to Alexis if he just believed in her. This was a year later, 6 months after her divorce was finalized. One afternoon, Alexis' sister called with an invitation to dinner on Saturday night. "Dress comfortably, but nicely. I have a friend who I work with at the bank. His name is John, who you should meet. Another one of your setups? This guy is different. You'll like him. He is smart, successful, and not overly self-confident. That sounds like the male equivalent of outstanding personality." Alexis laughed when she said this, but agreed to attend. The dinner party was a great success, and Alexis accepted John's invitation to go to the show and dinner the following weekend. John Farnsworth rang a bell while holding a bouquet of autumn asters. Alexis answered the door wearing a beautiful dark blue dress and 10 centimeters heels. When John entered the house, he met Alexis's stunning blue eyes. "You look amazing." Alexis took the bouquet in one hand and played with John's lapel with the other. "And you look very smart yourself. Let me put this in the water." John was almost embarrassed watching Alexis's shapely ass in that dress as she walked into the kitchen. "And those legs are outstanding." As John helped Alexis put on her coat, she decided to get rid of it right away, so she asked, "I'm wearing heels. Will this be a problem?" John was a little surprised by the question and wondered if he had time to turn in those damn theater tickets if she was trying to back out of their date. Perhaps she regretted accepting his invitation now that she was standing next to him. "No, I like looking into your eyes this way. Will it be a problem if you are accompanied by a guy of my height?" Look, I'm sorry. Last month I was dating a guy about your height, and he asked me to wear ballet flats. I didn't even think about it until you came to the door. I just didn't want to seem like a bitch. I suck at dating. Ask my sister. She'll tell you. John laughed, although he wondered if it made her even more awkward. It was all too ridiculous. Okay, can we start over? Alexis blushed. Yes, please, let's go. Otherwise, we'll be late. John took her hand and led her to his car, holding the door for her. John headed downtown, looking back at Alexis. Do you have problems dating a guy my height? Especially with a guy who loves the way your legs look in those heels? Alexis understood why her sister was so eager to set her up with this guy. He was direct and confident without being arrogant. My ex, who spanned, was 185 centimeters and a cheating as hola. How much do you have? 180 centimeters, and you seem like a Greek guy. I'm a Greek guy, but for 180 centimeters, thank you. John said this as a jokey, but that wasn't enough for my last serious relationship. She needed more height. Well, she sounds as stupid as my ex. Perhaps we should introduce them to each other. Only if we castrate them first so they can't produce offspring. There are enough stupid people in the world. John was already starting to like this woman. Over dinner after the show, John ended up telling her about his failed marriage proposal. Alexis reached out and squeezed John's hand. It's terrible, but at least you found out about it before you walked down the aisle. 3 years into our relationship, I realized that behind all his bravado was a scared little boy who needed constant confirmation of his worth, especially sexually. After his second indiscretion, at least the second one that I learned about, it was time to cut my losses. So here I am. I'm 24 and divorced. I've dated 4 men since my divorce, and I'm so socially awkward that I almost ruined the best date of my life with a stupid comment about my heels. Can you ever forgive me? Now it was John's turn to reach out and take Alexis's hand. He found it hard to believe that this gorgeous woman with such a kind heart was asking for his forgiveness. Alexis looked across the table and somehow knew this is the man I'm going to marry. We're going to have kids, and we're going to grow old together. It was the beginning of a wonderful relationship. 7 months later, on a warm spring night, John asked Alexis if she would marry him. Alexis wrapped her arms around John's neck and said yes before kissing him passionately. 2 months later, a district judge married Alexis North to John Farnsworth in an intimate ceremony on his parents' back lawn. They had children and lived happily ever after. My phone rang and it pulled me out of my daydream. Looking at the phone, I was happy to see that it was my husband calling. Hi, baby. Katie, where are you? I'm sitting in Sullivan's across from the park drinking and dreaming. Where are you? I came home early. I called your office and they told me you left after lunch. I decided to come home and surprise you. Thought we could have an early cocktail, then an early dinner, and then maybe go to bed early. Anthony, are you a dog trying to seduce me? This thought came to my mind. Today is your birthday, and I wanted to give you something special. Special like the one you gave me last night and the night before? No, it's really special. I bought some magic pills that were advertised on late-night television. Tonight you have King Kong. Anthony said the words with difficulty before bursting into laughter at his own joke. God, I love this man. His sense of humor and the way he always thinks of me first. What it feels like when he hugs me, I think it's time to give him the one thing he's wanted for the past year. He interrupted my train of thought. What do you do besides drink? You know me, hubby. I let my imagination run wild. When are you going to write down some of these stories and let me read them? What? And tell my husband that he married a pervert? Why not? This way I will know that we are made for each other. 2 perverts, hopelessly in love. Go home and I'll prove it to you. I'll pay my bill. I'm a couple of Negronis ahead of you. Have a drink and I'll be home in 20 minutes. Order Thai dinner. We'll strip naked and feed each other pad Thai and spring rolls. Knowing that my husband was waiting for me, I decided to splurge by taking a taxi instead of the bus. While I waited for the taxi to appear, I called my gynecologist office to make an appointment to have the IUD removed. With any luck, Anthony will be a father by this time next year. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.